Hello, friends. What's going on? Happy Friday. Look what we've got. We've got this sexy new graphics. We've got it looks professional now. Welcome to Flamesnation Live. We've even got a name for what we're doing now. Flamesnation Live is live. Welcome aboard, and let's talk some Flames on a Friday night. I'm Pat Steinberg from Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Look, I can prove it. I'm in the just finished the big show, and I'm in our Sportsnet 960 studio right now. Let's talk some Calgary Flames hockey on a Friday night. Thanks for being with us. Here's the first question of the day. Would you trade for Matt Dumba? Would you go after Matt Dumba in Minnesota? Ever since Jonas Brodin signed that contract, ever since the Wild extended Brodin and gave him that 7x6, it seems like everybody is talking about the fact that Dumba's the odd man out, and he has got a contract that has 3 years left on it. It's at $6 million per. He's a right-shot defenseman, which a lot of people are interested in, and a lot of people believe there is there's a need for a right-shot defenseman for the Calgary Flames. So, I don't know. Would you be interested in going after a guy like Matt Dumba? Rob on our comments page right away says, yeah, not for Sean Monahan. Let me tell you where I'm at on Dumba. I think that there is lots of reason to suggest that Dumba would be a good fit for the Flames. I absolutely do, because I think that's a good hockey player. I think he's a decent defenseman. I think you have to, be very, very careful about what exactly you're getting if you go out and get him. I don't think you're getting a number one defenseman. I don't think you're getting a bona fide, no questions asked, top pairing defenseman. But I do think that you're getting a good guy. I see him kind of as a tweener. I see him as a 2-3, a guy that can play on your top pair, but a guy that probably too good to be a full-time second pair guy, but I don't know if he is a bona fide top pair guy either. So I see him kind of as a tweener in that regard. And so, yeah, in a vacuum, sure, I'd go out and think about acquiring Matt Dumba. The problem is, as Rob said, not for Sean Monahan. It sure does feel like if the Wild are going to go out and trade Dumba, and if that's going to happen, it sure does feel like it would have to be a center iceman coming back, and you're probably talking about a guy like Monahan, similar ages. I don't know if a Backlund or a Bennett would get it done. So here's where I am on Dumba. I wouldn't do it for Monahan. I would not. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the concept of trading Sean Monahan. If they were to trade Sean Monahan, then that's okay. If it's going to make the team better. I don't think he's untouchable at this point. But if you're going to trade a guy of that, if you're going to trade a guy that valuable, a guy that I think is that good of a trade chip, I think you need to make sure you're maximizing it. And I think you need to make sure that you're, without question, getting back what you deserve. And I don't know if bringing Dumba and something else back would do that for me. So I wouldn't. If Monahan's involved. In a vacuum, I would, but not if it's for a guy like Monahan. James goes, I do Monahan and Shillington for Dumba and one of Minnesota's young forwards like Kunin. And we talked about that on the show earlier this week. And yeah, maybe. I guess if you're starting to make it, a larger deal, then maybe you like it a little bit more. But the problem is, I just don't love a lot of what Minnesota has on their team. They're just not a great hockey team. And I think that there's some nice pieces that are maybe starting to be built around, but even still, what is Joel Eriksson Ek? What is Kirill Kaprizov? What is Luke Kunin? I don't think we know yet. What is Donato? I don't think we know at this point. So, yeah, I don't love the idea. I don't love the idea of a bigger deal. I don't love the idea of a one-for-one deal, personally. I don't. But what is interesting is that it sure does sound like the Flames are interested in shaking up their blue line. Now, here's what I have written down. I've got written down Brody versus Dumba. And Brody versus Dumba is an interesting one for me. So I think if the Flames were to go and acquire a guy like Dumba, which I have no idea, I have no inside information as to whether or not they are close or they're doing that. All we've heard is that that is potentially something that could happen. A couple of insiders have connected Dumba to the Flames and said they might be interested. So if that were to be true, and if that were to happen, what would you prioritize? Dumba's 26, Brody's 30, 4-year age gap there. We don't know what Brody's contract is going to look like, but I think, somewhere in the 4-5 range, somewhere between $5 and $6 million is probably fair. Would you rather have Brody at 30 on a contract? Let's just say, for sake of this, it's going to be 5 times 5. Just for, maybe it's more year, maybe it's fewer years, maybe the AAV slightly. Just for the sake of this conversation, 5 times 5 for Brody. Would you rather have Brody at 30 at 5 by 5, or would you rather have Dumba at 26 with 3 years left at 6? And the significant acquisition price that you would have to give up to get him. Like, you can't just compare player to player in this case. I think you have to compare player without an asking price, like without an acquisition price, and the player with the acquisition price. One guy is under contract, but you have to trade for. One guy you're just re-signing, and there is no acquisition price because you drafted him. He's been a Calgary Flame for life. I lean towards Brody. I think if I'm looking at where the Flames are and where they're going and their assets or lack thereof, I don't think making a big deal, whether it's picks involved or whether it's Monahan involved, whatever. I don't like that idea as much as I like the idea of them going out and potentially bringing back TJ Brody, or maybe it's free agency elsewhere. But if it's just Brody or Dumba in a vacuum, I'm going with Brody if that is the choice that I was given. And look, I mean, that's me. I don't know if I certainly don't believe that is universal. Read some of the comments on the side here, because you could get what Jordan writes, for instance, you could get more long-term financial certainty with re-signing Brody than getting Dumba. That's the other thing, is that you do get some certainty with bringing Dumba in 3 years at $6 million, but then what? Then he's 29, and then you're in a spot where you're having to sign another contract. What does that look like? So if it were me, yeah, I'd be moving a guy like I'd be bringing back a guy like Brody, as opposed to paying what it might take to go get a guy like Matt Dumba. The stupid comments page is not loading properly. I've got one here. I just don't know who it's from because it won't let me scroll up. The Facebook app can be very, very, not the Facebook app, but the Facebook web interface for live streaming can be very, very frustrating sometimes. I know that we're on, but it can be difficult to read the comments. I'm trying to read this one. I just can't tell who it's from. Basically, I don't know who wrote this, so I apologize because I can't see it. Stupid program. But it says, are the Flames ever going to give Shillington a shot to be a regular, or do you see him ever getting out of the doghouse? I think this might be the year where that's exactly what we see, where they give him a chance to be a regular. I think this might be the year where they give them an opportunity, where they give Shillington an opportunity to maybe be a regular guy all season long. Now, Connor Mackey's an interesting addition to the conversation, and who knows, Shillington might be a trade chip. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's a guy they move at some point this offseason to try and further something else they're looking to do. But yeah, I think there's a much better chance this year than any other year that Shillington is a regular. And he was essentially a regular last year. The only reason that he wasn't was because they brought in Forbort and Gustafsson. And once they brought those guys in, it kind of dropped Shillington out of the mix to be a regular. He was kind of a 6-7 last year. But you're bringing Valimaki in for sure, and I think he's going to be an everyday guy if he can stay healthy. And I think Shillington, at the very least, has that shot to do it. Whether or not he's here next year, that I don't know. I think there's a chance that he'll be elsewhere for sure, just because the Flames are looking to shake things up a little bit. But yeah, to that question, I do believe there's a better chance this year that we see Shillington given that opportunity. I mean, last couple of years, he got that opportunity to start, but it just didn't stick. And I know the Flames aren't super thrilled with the progression and how things have gone defensively. Like, he hasn't gotten better defensively enough for them. So that remains an issue for the team. But yeah, I do think there's more of a chance that happens. So we'll see what happens with Shillington. Sorry, I needed to take that drink. It's hard with the headset. You can't necessarily mute yourself. This comes in from William. We're going to see Ward bring in his own people. Are you talking about coaches or are you talking about players? I don't think the coaching staff is going to change significantly. We'll get back to the blue line in just a second, but to William's question, if you're talking about coaches, the only one that I see being a question is whether or not they keep Ray Edwards on the bench as an assistant or if they decide to go and bring him back to the development role and bring Marty Jelena back towards on the bench. I don't think and if they don't bring back Ray Edwards in the assistant coach role, and if he stays or goes back to his primary role being development, I could see them going out and bringing in kind of an associate coach to Jeff Ward. A name that Ryan Pike and I have kicked around is Tim Hunter. There's a guy who has been a head coach at the Western Hockey League level and has been an associate and an assistant coach for plenty of years in the NHL. He's now gone from being a full-time NHLer to a full-time coach. He's got the head coaching experience. I think he'd be a nice associate. So that's a name that Pike and I have just kicked around when talking in private. What about a guy like Tim Hunter? So that is a possibility. Back to the blue line where Dave writes on our comments page. It's by the way, Flamesnation Live. Look at how sexy our new graphics are. We've got a logo, we've got the Instagram stuff, we got the Facebook stuff, and we got a ticker on the bottom. Like, what is going on here? We went from just having my face to now having this. It kind of distracts you from this and having to look at this. But this says, what about the OEL rumor? I don't think that it would be crazy to believe that the Flames are interested in Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I don't see a natural fit myself. Salary cap, left shot defenseman, age, like all of the things that I believe, all of the things that I think are important in running a hockey team. I don't like the idea of them going out and getting Ekman-Larsson. He's 29. He's got 7 years left at over $8 million per. What is he? Is there a better chance that he is post apex and on the way down or at his peak, or is there a better chance that he does what Mark Giordano has done, and that is become better and play his best hockey over 30? Well, I lean towards the former. How many guys do what Gio does? Nobody. Gio is a complete freak, an absolute freak of nature in the best possible way. Gio has defied conventional wisdom his entire career. So do I see Oliver Ekman-Larsson all of a sudden becoming the best player that he's ever been at 30, 31, 32, and with that much time left? You almost need that to happen if you're going to acquire him. I wouldn't do it. I like the idea of Kemper from Arizona more than I like the idea of going out and getting Oliver Ekman-Larsson, just because it is it's I think the asking price is going to be astronomical, and I don't love how I really don't love the contract and the fit. James says another name I wanted to throw out there was Tyson Barrie. Again, he's a free agent, but I think Brody's a better defenseman than Tyson Barrie is. At the same age. I'd rather have Brody than Barrie, personally. I know that Brody's gotten a rough ride in this city at times, but I think Brody's the superior defenseman to Barrie. Barry's got more offensive upside. He's more of the pure power play quarterback type guy. I'm not saying that he's not an NHLer. I just think as an all-round defenseman, I think Brody's the better guy than Barrie. So I don't love the idea of them going after a guy like Tyson Barrie either. So here's another name I'll throw at you as we're talking blue line today on Flamesnation Live. Where are we on Noah Hannafin then? Because Craig Custance of The Athletic, it's scrolled across our ticker here at the bottom. Look at the ticker. I'm so proud of all these graphics. But Craig Custance of The Athletic earlier this week in speaking to general managers across the league, has said that he's hearing that Noah Hanifin could be on the block, and executives across the league are expecting Hanifin to be on the block and to potentially be available. What do we think of that? Here's where I am. I understand why that might be the case. I understand why they might look at him as a potential trade chip inside Calgary's front office, but I guess I worry a little bit on a few different things. First of all, Hanifin is still a top 4 NHL defenseman. He can still play on a top 2 pair in this league. So, are you ready to just say goodbye to that? Because I don't know if they have anybody to replace that internally right away. I do believe long-term, Juuso Välimäki is a full-time top 4 left shot defenseman, but is he that right now? Like, I believe Välimäki's on the team to start next year, barring injuries, and if he can stay healthy, I think Välimäki's on this team to start next season. But are you comfortable having him in a top 4 role to start the year? Are you comfortable with Välimäki as one of your top 2 pairing defensemen? Personally, I wouldn't be, because we haven't seen it. He's got like 24 NHL games under his belt. So I would rather work Välimäki in as a third pairing guy and let him go about his business there, as opposed to just pushing him in to a top 2 pairing role right from the get-go, and now you're forcing him to play 19, 20, 21 minutes a game. I would rather ease him in, and I think Hanifin lets you do that. I think Hanifin acts as a bit of a security blanket. And then I also think that at some point you could potentially trade Hanifin in season. If Välimäki is starting to show that he should be a top 4 guy full-time, well, then you can start to explore a Hanifin trade. At least in a vacuum, I wouldn't be trying to run Hanifin out of town as it stands right now. And as William says, cheap as well. Like, we're not talking about a bad contract. He's under $5 million. It's a very movable contract, but it's also a very cap-friendly contract for the Flames. Okay, let's move to goaltending. Joy says, depending on what Talbot wants, who would you take between Talbot or Kemper? And again, this is a similar conversation, Joy, to the conversation that we had with Dumba Brody. In a vacuum, I'm taking Kemper over Talbot, but you're not getting Kemper just on a re-sign. You're going to have to give up significant assets to bring in Kemper. Like Friedman's talked about them wanting a first-round pick for Kemper. I'm okay with that. Like me, I'm okay with that. Others might not be. I think Kemper's a number 1 goaltender, and I think one of the biggest downfalls of the Brad Treliving management regime has been the fact that they have not been able to successfully find a number 1 goaltender. From Jonas Hiller to Brian Elliott to Chad Johnson to David Riddick to Mike Smith to Cam Talbot, they have not found that bona fide number 1 guy that can be a number 1 guy for more than half a season. And I think Kemper could be that guy. He's a career .924. He's been number 1 in Arizona the last 2 years. He's been an elite goaltender in Arizona the last 2 years. And he was starting to trend in that direction before Arizona acquired him from LA. So I like the idea of going to get Kemper. So in a vacuum, I'm choosing Kemper over Talbot. And if the asking price is not ridiculous, then I like the idea of them going to get him too. If the asking price is too much, or if somebody outbids the Flames for Kemper, then sure. I think bringing back Talbot is not a bad play. And I think that having Talbot and Riddick back next year, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just believe they might be looking for other things. And James goes, here's the real juicy one. And I don't think that, James, you're off base. He says, I've been throwing Markstrom out for weeks. I'd rather sign Markstrom than give up a first for Kemper. I don't think it's crazy to think that if Markstrom gets to free agency, the Flames will be a massive suitor. In fact, I'm quite confident they will be a massive suitor if Markstrom gets to free agency. It's been thrown around. Elliott talked about it this morning with the boys on our morning show at Sportsnet 960. He said, did you know? Just Markstrom and Elias Lindholm are like best friends. Now, does that mean anything in the long run? Is that going to be the harbinger of things to come? Probably not. But everything that I am led to believe is that, yes, the Flames are very interested in Markstrom if he gets to free agency. Would a 6x6 get it done? I don't know. I don't know if the Flames would be okay with that. maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I mean, again, as we said, they haven't been able to solve that number one goaltending conundrum. Would 6x6, would 5x5. Some of the reports you hear out of Vancouver is that they're looking somewhere in the $5 million range, but that hasn't gotten done yet. So do the Canucks need to bump their total up? Remember, Pat Morris is the agent for Jacob Markstrom. He is a historically very strong negotiator for his clients. So yeah, if Markstrom gets to free agency, I think the Flames will be one of his heavy suitors. The question is, does he get to free agency? And I still don't think he will. I still think Vancouver will find a way to keep him. And if they don't find a way to keep him, I think they're making a huge mistake. So that's why I believe they probably will in the end get it done. But on the off chance that he gets to free agency, that would be very exciting for the Flames to go and chase. And so that would be a really interesting target for the Flames to go after. Look at this. We're going to do something again. I found this real cool software that we could do this on. So I'm going to take a couple of tweets. You can always get at me at Fan960Steinberg or at Flamesnation on Twitter. And when you see those tweets, like if you want topics for the Flames Nation Live, we'll answer them for sure. Here's a tweet. This one coming from The Landslide is Coming, and says, trade for Laine and move Monty for D-help. The trade for Laine thing is fascinating. A buddy of mine keeps throwing that at me too. Like, you got to go after Patrik Laine. Is Laine even on the block? And I know that he's been thrown out there by some of the insiders, but everybody in Winnipeg says that Laine is not on the block. Everybody in Winnipeg says Laine is going to stay there. I'm just going to try and peek out from the tweet. Hi. So I would be stunned if Laine was available. I really would, even though he has been mentioned in trade talks before. But if he was, yeah, I mean, it's not the craziest thing to think that that they might be interested. Again, it's not the guy that I would be number one going after, because I worry about some of the defensive deficiencies in Laine's game. I mean, the guy's got a hell of a shot. He's young, and he still is I think, developing, but I would be more interested in other wingers before Laine myself. As for trading Monahan for D-help, sure, concept's fine, but what D-help? Is it Dumba? I would say no. Is it somebody else? Well, then let's have that conversation. Here's one from David Coates on Twitter. It says, Dumba's a great player, but what the Flames need is a goaltender. What need does Dumba fill on this team? Well, I think the need that Dumba would fill is potentially a right-shot defenseman if they don't decide to bring back Hamonic or Brody. I don't think they're going to be bringing back Hamonic, so it would be, if they don't bring back Brody too, well, then they've got a huge need for a right-side defenseman. Brody's technically not a right shot. He's a right-side defenseman. They'd have a huge need for somebody there. And it would fill the need of making the blue line a little bit younger. Like from Brody or Hamonic to Dumba on the right side, you're gaining 4 years, because Dumba's 26 and both those guys are 30. So you're getting 4 years of youth on top of it. So that's a couple of our tweets today, and some great stuff on the side as well. Hey, these are fun. What do we think of the graphics? Do we like them? Are they distracting? Do you like the ticker? Do you like the side stuff? What do we think of the presentation of Flames Nation Live? I'm quite happy. I think these look really good. I think it's a nice way of making it look a little less amateur than when we first started. All the credit in the world to Dustin Nielsen. He started doing stuff like this at Oilers Nation, and I have completely ripped him off. But I think these look slick. I think they look good. I think it's a good way to engage. We're going to do these a couple of times a week. You can follow on Instagram at Steinberg1984, at Fan960Steinberg. You already know where to get us at Flames Nation as well. The big show goes 1 till 6 every weekday on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Thank you for your tweets. Thank you for your comments. We'll talk to you early next week with another edition of Flames Nation Live. Be well, everybody. Thanks for doing this. This is a lot of fun. We'll talk to you next week.